16. Leave takings. Lying on sweat-soaked sheets, staring at the ceiling, Perrin realized that the darkness was turning to gray. Soon the sun would be edging above the horizon. Morning. A time for new hopes. A time to be up and doing. New hopes. He almost laughed. How long had he been awake? An hour or more, surely, this time. Scratching his curly beard, he winced. His bruised shoulder had stiffened, and he sat up slowly. Sweat popped out on his face as he worked the arm. He kept at it methodically, though, suppressing groans, and now and again biting back a curse, until he could move the arm freely, if not comfortably. Sleep as he had managed had been broken and fitful. When he was awake, he had seen Fail's face, the dark eyes accusing him, the hurt he had put there making him cringe inside. When he slept, he dreamed of mounting a gallows, and Fail watching, or worse, trying to stop it, trying to fight white cloaks with their lances and swords. And he was screaming while they fitted the noose around his neck, screaming because the white cloaks were killing Fail. Sometimes she watched them hanging with a smile of angry satisfaction. Small wonder such dreams wakened him with a jerk. Once he had dreamed of wolves running out of the forest to save both Fail and him, only to be spitted on white cloak lances, shot down by their arrows. It had not been a restful night. Washing and dressing as hurriedly as he could, he left the room as if hoping to leave memories of his dreams behind. No outward evidence remained of the night's attack. Here a sword-slashed tapestry, there a chest with a corner splintered by an axe, or a lighter patch on the stone-tiled floor where a blood-stained rug had been removed. The Majira had her liveried army of servants out in force, though many wore bandages, sweeping, mopping, clearing away and replacing. She limped about, leaning on a stick. A broad woman with her gray hair pushed up like a round cap by the dressing wound around her head, calling her orders in a firm voice, with the clear intention of removing every sign of the stone's second violation. She saw Perrin and gave him an infinitesimal curtsy. Even the High Lords did not get much more from her, even when she was well. Despite all the cleaning and scrubbing, under the smell of waxes and polishes and cleaning fluids, Perrin could still catch the faint scent of blood, sharply metallic human blood, fetid Trolloc blood, acrid Myrddraal blood, with its stink that burned his nostrils. He would be glad to be away from here. The door to Loyal's room was a span across, and more than 2 spans high, with an overlarge door handle in the shape of entwined vines, level with Perrin's head. The stone had a number of rarely used Ogier guest rooms. The stone of Tyr predated even the age of great Ogier stoneworks. But it was a point of prestige to use Ogier stonemasons, at least from time to time. Perrin knocked, and at the call of "Come in," in a voice like a slow avalanche, lifted the handle and complied. The room was on a scale with the door in every dimension, yet Loyal, standing in the middle of a leaf-patterned carpet in his shirt sleeves, a long pipe in his teeth, reduced it all to seemingly normal size. The Ogier stood taller than a Trolloc in his wide-toed, thigh-high boots, if not so broad as one. His dark green coat, buttoned to the waist, and flaring to his boot tops like a kilt over baggy trousers, no longer looked odd to Perrin. But one look was enough to tell him this was not an ordinary man in an ordinary room. The Ogier's nose was so broad as to seem a snout, and eyebrows like long mustaches dangled beside eyes the size of teacups. Tufted ears poked up through shaggy black hair that hung nearly to his shoulders. When he grinned around his pipe stem at the sight of Perrin, it split his face in half. "Good morning, Perrin," he rumbled, removing the pipe. "You slept well? Not easy after such a night as that. Myself, I have been up half the night writing down what happened." A pen in his other hand, and ink stains on his sausage-thick fingers. Books lay everywhere, on Ogier-sized chairs, and the huge bed, and the table that stood as high as Perrin's chest. That was no surprise. But what was a little startling was the flowers. Flowers of every sort and every color. Vases of flowers, baskets of them, posies tied with ribbon, or even string, great woven banks of flowers standing about like lengths of garden wall. Perrin had certainly never seen the like inside a room. Their scent filled the air. Yet what really caught his eye was the swollen knot on Loyal's
One
head,
second, everyone.
the size of a man's fist, and the heavy limp in Loyal's walk. If Loyal had been hurt too badly to travel, he felt ashamed at thinking it that way. The Ogier was a friend, but he had to. You were injured, Loyal? Moraine could heal you. I am sure she will.
Oh, I can get around with no trouble. And there are so many who truly needed her help. I would not want to bother her. It certainly is not enough to hamper me in my wound.
Loyal glanced at the table where a large cloth-bound book, large for Perrin, but it would fit in one of the Ogier's coat pockets, lay open beside an uncorked ink bottle.
I hope I wrote it all down correctly. I did not see very much last night until it was...
Loyal, Fail said, standing up from behind one of the banks of flowers with a book in her hands. He's a hero. Perrin jumped. The flowers had masked her scent completely. Loyal made shushing noises, his ears twitching with embarrassment, and waved his big hands at her, but she went on, her voice cool but her eyes hot on Perrin's face. He gathered as many children as he could, and some of their mothers, into a large room, held the door alone against Frolics and Myrtle through the entire fight. His flowers are from the women of the stone, tokens to honor his steadfast courage, his faithfulness. She made steadfast and faithfulness crack like whips. Perrin managed not to flinch, but only just. What he had done was right, but he could not expect her to see it. Even if she knew why, she would not see it. It was the right thing. It was. He only wished he felt better about the entire matter. It was hardly fair that he could be right and still feel in the wrong.
It was nothing.
Loyal's ears twitched wildly.
It is just that the children could not defend themselves. That's all. Not a hero. No.
Nonsense. Fail marked her place in the book with a finger and moved closer to the Ogier. She did not come up to his chest. There is not a woman in the stone who would not marry you if you were human, and some would anyway. Loyal, well named, for your nature is loyalty. Any woman could love that. Ogier's ears went stiff with shock, and Perrin grinned. She had obviously been feeding Loyal honey and butter all morning and hoped the Ogier would agree to take her along, no matter what Perrin wanted. But in trying to prick him, she had just fed Loyal a stone without knowing it. Have you heard from your mother, Loyal? He asked.
No.
Loyal managed to sound relieved and worried at the same time.
I saw Rayfar in the city yesterday. He was as surprised to see me as I to see him. We are not a common sight in Tyr. He came from Stedding Shanghai to negotiate repairs on some...
One second, I gotta fix my camera again.
I have no doubt the first words out of his mouth when he returns to the Stedding will be, Loyal is in Tyr.
That is worrying, Perrin said, and Loyal nodded dejectedly.
Rayfar says the elders have named me a runaway, and my mother has promised to have me married and settled. She even has someone chosen. Rayfar did not know who. At least, he said he did not. He thinks such things are funny. She could be here in a month's time.
Fail's face was a picture of confusion that almost made Perrin grin again. She thought she knew so much more than he did about the world. Well, she did, in truth. But she did not know Loyal. Stedding Shanghai was Loyal's home, in the spine of the world, and since he was barely past 90, he was not old enough to have left on his own. Ogier lived a very long time. By their standards, Loyal was no older than Perrin, maybe younger. But Loyal had gone anyway, to see the world, and his greatest fear was that his mother would find him and drag him back to the Stedding to marry, never to leave
That's
again.
good enough. I'm using my tablet right
Figure
now.
out what was going on. Perrin stepped into the silence. I need to go back to the Two Rivers, Loyal. Your mother won't find you there.
Yes, that is true.
The Ogier gave an uncomfortable shrug.
But my book, Brand's story, and yours and Matt's. I have so many notes already, but...
He moved around behind the table, peering down at the open book, the pages filled with his neat script.
Will be the one to write the true story of the Dragon Reborn, Perrin. The only book by someone who traveled with him, who actually saw it unfold. The Dragon Reborn, by Lúin, son of Arendt, son of Helen, of Stedding Shangtar.
He bent over the book, dipping his pen in the ink bottle.
That is not quite right. It was more.
Perrin put a hand on the page where Loyal was going to write. You'll write no book if your mother finds you. Not about Rand, at least. And I need you, Loyal.
Me, Perrin? I do not understand.
There are white cloaks in the two rivers, hunting me.
Hunting you? But why?
Loyal looked almost as confused as Fail had. Fail, on the other hand, had donned a complacent smugness that was worrisome. Perrin went on anyway. The reasons don't matter. The fact is that they are. They may hurt people, my family, looking for me. Knowing white cloaks, they will. I can stop it if I can get there quickly, but it must be quickly. The light only knows what they've done already. Need you to take me there, Loyal, by the ways. You told me once there was a way gate here, and I know there was one at Manetheren. It must still be there in the mountains above Emond's Field. Nothing can destroy a way gate, you said. I need you, Loyal.
Well, of course I will help.
Loyal said.
The ways.
He exhaled noisily, and his ears wilted a bit.
I want to write the adventures, not have them. I suppose one more time will not hurt. A light-scented soul.
He finished perfectly. Fail cleared her throat delicately. Are you not forgetting something, Loyal? You promised to take me into the ways whenever I asked, and before you took anyone else.
I did promise you a look at a way gate,
Loyal said.
and what it is like inside. You can have that when Perrin and I go. You could come with us, I suppose, but the ways are not traveled lightly by you. I would not enter them myself if Perrin did not have need.
He will not be coming. That's the thing. Just you and me, Loyal. Ignoring him, Fail smiled at Loyal, as if he were teasing her. You promised more than a look, Loyal. To take me wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted, and before anyone else. You swore to it.
I did,
Loyal protested.
but only because you refused to believe I would show you. You said you would not believe unless I swore. I will do as I promised, but surely you do not want to step ahead of Perrin's need.
Who swore? Fail said calmly. By your mother, and your mother's mother, and your mother's mother's mother.
Yes, I did, Fail, but Perrin...
You swore, Loyal. Do you mean to break your oath? The Ogier looked like misery stacked on misery. His shoulders slumped and his ears drooped, the corners of his wide mouth turned down, and the ends of his long eyebrows draggled onto his cheeks. She tricked you, Loyal. Perrin wondered if they could hear his teeth grinding. She deliberately tricked you. Red stained Fail's cheeks, but she still had the nerve to say, only because I had to, Loyal. Only because a fool man thinks he can order my life to suit himself. I'd not have done it otherwise. You must believe that. Doesn't it make any difference that she tricked you? Perrin demanded, and Loyal shook his massive head sadly. Ogier keep their word, Fail said, and Loyal is going to take me to the two rivers. Or to the way gate at Manetheren, at least. I have a wish to see the two rivers. Loyal stood up straight.
But that means I can help Perrin after all. Fail, why did you drag this out? Even Mayfar would not think this funny.
There was a touch of anger in his voice. It took a good bit to make an Ogier angry. If he asks, she said determinedly. That was part of it, Loyal. No one but you and me, unless they ask me. He has to ask me. No, Perrin told her, while Loyal was still opening his mouth. No, I won't ask. I will ride to Emond's Field first. I'll walk. So you might as well give up this foolishness. Tricking Loyal. Trying to force yourself in where you aren't wanted. Her calm dropped away in anger. And by the time you reach there, Loyal and I will have done for the White Cloaks. It will all be over. Ask, you anvil-headed blacksmith. Just ask and you can come with us. Perrin took hold of himself. There was no way to argue her around his way of thinking, but he would not ask. She was right. He would need weeks to reach the 2 rivers on his horse. They could be there in 2 days, perhaps, through the ways. But he would not ask. After she tricked Loyal and tried to bully me. Then I'll travel the ways to Manetheren alone. I'll follow you 2. If I stay far enough back not to be part of your party, I won't be breaking Loyal's oath. You can't stop me following.
That is dangerous, Perrin.
Loyal said worriedly.
The ways are dark. If you miss a turning or take the wrong bridge by accident, you could be lost forever. Or until Machin Shin catches you. Ask her, Perrin. She said you can come if you do. Ask her.
Togir's deep voice trembled, speaking the name of Machin Shin. And a shiver ran down Perrin's back, too. Machin Shin. The Black Wind. Not even Aes Sedai knew whether it was shadow spawn or something that had grown out of the way's corruption. Machin Shin was why traveling the ways meant risking death. That was what Aes Sedai said. The Black Wind eats souls. That Perrin knew for truth. But he kept his voice steady and his face straight. I'll be burned if I let her think I'm weakening. I can't, Loyal. Or anyway, I won't. Loyal grimaced.
Aiel, it will be dangerous for him trying to follow us. Please relent and let him...
She cut him off sharply. No. If he is too stiff-necked to ask, why should I? Why should I even care if he does get lost? She turned to Perrin. You can travel close to us, as close as you need to, so long as it's plain you are following. You will trail after me like a puppy until you ask. You just ask.
Stubborn humans, the Ogier muttered. Hasty and stubborn, even when haste lands you in a hornet nest.
I'd like to leave today, Loyal, Perrin said, not looking at Bayou.
Best to go quickly.
Loyal agreed with a regretful look at the book on the table.
I can tidy my notes on the journey, I suppose. The light knows what I will miss being away from Rand.
Did you hear me, Perrin? Bayou demanded. I will get my horse and a few supplies, Loyal. We can be on our way by mid-morning. Turn, you Perrin Aybara! Answer me! Loyal eyed her worriedly.
Perrin, are you certain you could not?
No, Perrin interrupted gently. She is mule-headed, and she likes playing tricks. I won't dance so she can laugh. He ignored the sound coming from deep in Bayou's throat, like a cat, staring at a strange dog and ready to attack. I'll let you know as soon as I am ready. He started for the door, and she called after him furiously. When is my decision, Perrin Aybara? Mine and Loyal's. Do you hear me? You had better be ready in 2 hours, or we'll leave you behind. You can meet us at the Dragonwall Gate stable, if you're coming. Do you hear me? Fenster moving and shut the door behind him just as something thumped into it heavily. A book, he thought. Loyal would give her fits about that. Better to hit Loyal on the head than harm one of his books. A moment he leaned against the door, despairing. All he had done, all he had gone through, making her hate him, and she was going to be there to see him die anyway. The best thing he could say was that she might enjoy it. Stubborn, mule-headed woman. So, one of the three was approaching. A tall man with green eyes who could have been a person or a young uncle. He knew the man and liked him, if only because Gaul had never given even a flicker of notice to his yellow eyes. May you find shade this morning, Perrin. The Majira told me you had come this way, though I think she itched to put a broom in her hands. As hard as a wise one, that woman. You'll find shade this morning, Gaul. Women are all hard-headed, if you ask me. Perhaps so, if you do not know how to get round them. I hear you are journeying to the two rivers. Light, Baron growled before the Aiel could say more. Does the whole stone know? If Moraine knew. Gaul shook his head. And Dalfor took me aside and spoke to me, asking me if I know. Maybe you speak to others too. But I do not know how many will want to go with you. We have been on this side of the Dragon Wall for a long time, and many ache for the threefold land. With me? Baron felt stunned. If he had Aiel with him, there were possibilities he had not dared consider before. Rand asked you to come with me to the two rivers? Gaul shook his head again. Only said that you were going, that there were men who might try to kill you. I mean to accompany you, though, if you will have me. Why? Baron almost laughed. I will that. We'll be in the ways in a few hours. The ways? Gaul's expression did not change, but he blinked. Does that make a difference? Death comes for all men, Baron. It was hardly a comforting answer.
Cannot believe Rand is that cruel, Egwene said, and Nynaeve added, at least he did not try to stop you. Seated on Nynaeve's bed, they were finishing the division of the gold Moiraine had provided. 4 fat purses apiece to be carried in pockets sewn under Elaine's and Nynaeve's skirts, and another each, not so large as to attract unwanted attention, to carry at the belt. Egwene had taken a lesser amount, there being less use for gold in the waist.
Hey, Dirt, how you doing?
Egwene frowned at the 2 neatly tied bundles and
Hope you're doing well.
lying beside the door. They held all of her clothes and other things, cased knife and fork, hairbrush and comb, needles, pins, thread, thimble, scissors, a tinder box and a second
That's
knife,
it, nice.
smaller than the one at her belt, soap and bath powder, and it was ridiculous to go over the list again. Egwene's stone ring was snug in her pouch.
I enjoy them.
She
They're
preferred to go. There was
audiobooks.
nothing to hold her back. No,
They help me
did not.
sleep.
Elaine
Plus,
was proud of how
a little
calm
bit
and
of
collected she
this,
sounded. He
a little
seemed
bit of
almost
that.
Relieved.
Just listen
And
to
I
a
had
book
to give you
and
that letter, laying my heart open like a stone
smoke until
At least he won't open
I
it
get
before I'm
tired.
gone. She jumped at the touch of Nynaeve's hand on her shoulder.
it might help you sleep
Did
if
you
you
want
just
him to ask you to
kick
stay?
back.
You know what your answer would have been.
Uh,
You do, don't you? Elaine compressed her lips. Of course I do. But he did not have to look happy about it.
just sit back, relax, listen to a book.
Nynaeve gave her an
It tends to help
understanding look.
sometimes.
Men are difficult at the best.
Definitely appreciate you
I
stopping
still
by.
cannot believe he would be so... Egwene began in an angry mutter. Elaine never learned what she meant to say, for at that moment the door crashed open so hard that it bounced off the wall. Elaine embraced Saidar before she had stopped flinching, then felt a moment of embarrassment when
I'm
the
hitting
rebounding
the wrong
door
button.
slapped hard against Land's outstretched hand. A moment more, and she decided to hold on to the source a while longer.
There
The
we go.
warder filled the doorway
That
with his
should've
broad
did it.
shoulders, his face a thunderhead. If his blue eyes could really have given off the thunderbolts they threatened, they would have blasted Nynaeve. The glow of Saidar surrounded Egwene, too, and did not fade. And did not appear to see anyone but Nynaeve. You let me believe you were returning to Tar Valon, he rasped at her. You may have believed it, she said calmly, but I never said it. Never said it. Never said it. You spoke of leaving today, and always linked your leaving with those dark friends being sent to Tar Valon. Always. What did you mean me to think? But I never said, light woman, he roared. Do not bandy words with me. Elaine exchanged
And then I
words
have,
with Egwene. This man had an iron self-control, but he
a
was
couple,
at a breaking point now.
pins,
Nynaeve was
too.
one who often let her emotions rage, yet she faced him
These
coolly,
two are
head high and
a couple
eyes
3
serene,
gram ones, and
hands
this is
still
just
on
a
her green
2
silk
grammer.
skirts. Lan took hold of himself with an obvious effort. He appeared as stone-faced as ever, as much in control of himself, and Elaine was sure it was all on the surface. I'd not have known where you
I
were
gotta
off to
load
if
this
I had
boat
not
again.
heard that you had ordered a carriage to take you to a ship bound for Tanchico. I do not know why the Amerlin allowed you to leave the tower in the first place, or why Moiraine involved you in questioning Black Sisters.
Oh yeah.
But you three
Oh,
are
and then I got a
accepted,
little
not
bubble
Aes Sedai.
hash too.
Tanchico now is no place for anyone except a full Aes Sedai with a warder to watch her back. I'll not let you go into that. So, Nynaeve said lightly, you question Moiraine's decisions, and those of the Amerlin seat as well. Perhaps I've misunderstood Warders all along. I thought you swore to accept and obey, among other things. Lan, I do understand your concern, and I am grateful. More than grateful. But we all have tasks to perform. We are going. You
But
must resign
I'm smoking
yourself
roach
to that.
weed, so I guess that's a drawback.
For the love of the light, at least tell me why. Tanchico. If Moiraine has not told you, Nynaeve said gently, perhaps she has her reasons.
Yeah.
We must do our tasks,
Oh, good.
and you
Thanks.
must do yours. Anne trembled, actually trembled, and clamped his
This one's
jaw
a
shut
half,
angrily.
and this
When
one's
he spoke, he was strangely
a
happy.
couple sizes
You will need someone
below
to help you in Tanchico.
full inch.
Someone to keep a Tarabonner street thief from slipping a knife into your back for your purse. Tanchico was that sort of city before the war began, and everything I've heard says it is worse now. I could protect you, Nynaeve. Elaine's eyebrows shot up. He could not be suggesting. He just could not be. Nynaeve gave no sign that he had said anything out of the ordinary. Your place is with Moiraine.
I drop all kinds on the floor. Give me 1 second, everyone.
Sweat beaded on the warder's hard face, and he
did.
struggled with the words. I must. Nynaeve, You will remain with Moiraine, Nynaeve said sharply, until she releases you from your bond. You will do as I say. Pulling a carefully folded paper from her pouch, she thrust it into his hands. He frowned, read, then blinked and read again. Elaine knew what it said. What the bearer does is done at my order and by my authority. Obey and keep silent at my command. Swan Sanche, Watcher of the Seals,
There you
Flame
go.
of Tarvalon, the Amerlin Sea.
Just dumped all kinds of roach weed on the floor.
Other like it rested in Egwene's pouch, though none of them were sure what good it would do where she was going. But this allows you to do anything you please, Lan protested. You can speak in the Amerlin's name. Why would she give this to an accepted? Ask no questions I cannot answer, Nynaeve said, then added with a hint of a grin, just count yourself lucky I do not tell you to dance for me. Elaine suppressed a smile of her own. Egwene made a choking sound of swallowed laughter.
What I
It
got
was
for a
what
dab in
Nynaeve
there
had
real quick.
said when the Amerlin first handed them the letters. With this, I could make a warder dance. Neither of them had had any doubt which warder she had meant. Do you? You dispose of me very neatly. My bond and my oaths. This letter. Lan had a dangerous gleam in his eye which Nynaeve seemed not to notice as she took back the letter and replaced it in the pouch on her belt. You are very full of yourself, Lan.
There we go. Now we just gotta wait for it to
We
heat
do
up.
as we must, as you will. Full of myself, Nynaeve Almira. I am full of myself? Lan moved so quickly toward Nynaeve that Elaine very nearly wrapped him in flows of air before she could think. One moment Nynaeve was standing there, with just time to gape at the tall man sweeping toward her. The next, her shoes were dangling a foot off the floor, and she was being quite thoroughly kissed. At first, she kicked his shins and hammered him with her fists, and made sounds of frantic, furious protest. But her kicks slowed and then she was holding not protesting at all. Egwene dropped her eyes with embarrassment, but Elaine watched interestedly. Was that how she looked when ran? I time to write down, taking back everything she had said, letting him know she was not to be trifled with. But did she want to? After a while, Lan set Nynaeve back on her feet. She swayed a bit as she straightened her dress and patted her hair furiously. "You have no right," she began in a breathless voice, then stopped to swallow. "I will not be manhandled in that fashion for the whole world to see. I will not." "Not the whole world," he replied. "But if they can see, they can hear as well. You have made a place in my heart where I thought there was no room for anything else. You have made flowers grow where I cultivated dust and stones.
1 second.
Remember this on this journey you insist on making. If you die, I will not suppose you wrong." He gave Nynaeve one of his rare smiles. If it did not exactly soften his face, at least it made it less hard. "And remember also, I am not always so easily commanded, even with letters from the Amun." He made an elegant bow. For a moment Elaine thought he actually meant to kneel and kiss Nynaeve's great serpent ring. "As you command," he murmured. "So do I obey." It was difficult to tell whether he meant to be mocking or not. Soon as the door closed behind him, Nynaeve sank onto the edge of her bed as if letting her knees give way at last. She stared at the door with a pensive frown. "Poke the meekest dog too often," Elaine quoted, "and he will bite." Not that Lan was very meek. She got a sharp look and a sniff from Nynaeve. "He is insufferable," Egwene said. "Sometimes he is. Nynaeve, why did you do that? He was ready to go with you. I know you want nothing more than to break him free of Moraine. Do not try to deny it." Nynaeve did not try. Instead, she fussed with her dress and smoothed the coverlet on the bed. "Not like that," she said finally. "I mean him to be mine. All of him. I will not have him remembering a broken oath to Moraine. I will not have that between us, for him as well as myself." "Will it be any different if you bring him to ask Moraine to release him from his bond?" Egwene asked. "Lan is the kind of man who would see it as much the same thing. All that leaves is to somehow make her let him go of her own accord. How can you manage that?" "I do not know." Nynaeve firmed her voice. "Yet what must be done can be done. There is always a way. That is for another time. Work to be done, and we sit here fretting over men. Are you sure you have everything you need for the waste, Egwene?" "Avienda is readying everything," Egwene said. "She still seems unhappy, but she says we can reach Ruidian in little more than a month if we are lucky. You will be in Tanchico by then." "Perhaps sooner," Elaine told her, "if what they say about seafolk makers is true. You will be careful, Egwene. Even with Avienda for a guide, the waste cannot be safe." "I will. You be careful. Both of you. Tanchico is not much safer than the waste now." Abruptly, they were all hugging one another, repeating cautions to take care, making sure they all remembered the schedule for meeting in Tel Aran-Riyadh's stone. Elaine wiped tears from her cheeks. "As well Lan left," she laughed tremulously. "He would think we were all being foolish." "No, he would not," Nynaeve said, pulling up her skirts to settle a purse of gold into its pocket. "He may be a man, but he is not a complete dolt." There had to be time between here and the carriage to locate paper and pen, Elaine decided. She would find time. Nynaeve had the right of it. Men needed a firm hand. Rand would find he could not get away from her so easily, and he would not find it easy to worm his way back into her good graces.
Chapter 17. Deceptions. Quivering his stiff right leg, Tom bowed with a flourish of his gleeman's cloak that set the colorful patches fluttering. His eyes felt grainy, but he made himself speak lightly.
Good morning to you.
Straightening, he knuckled his long white mustache at Brandon. The black and gold-clad servants looked surprised. The two muscular lads straightened from the gold-studded red lacquer chest with a shattered lid. But they had been about to lift, and the three women stilled their mops in front of them. The hallway was empty along here, except for them, and any excuse to break their labor was good, especially at this hour. They looked as tired as Tom felt, with slumping shoulders and dark circles under their eyes. "A good morning to you, Gleeman," the eldest of the women said. A bit plump and plain-faced, perhaps. She had a nice smile, weary as she was. "Can we help you?" Tom produced 4 colored balls from a capacious coat sleeve and began to juggle. "I'm just going about trying to raise spirits. A Gleeman must do what he can." He would have used more than 4, but he was fatigued enough to make even that many an exercise.
Oh yeah, Dirt. You have a good one. We might try another live, but we're working on a hot spot.
He stifled a yawn.
The only reason that mine's going without glitching so much is because how late it is. I don't have much stuff on, but besides just my tablet.
She was pretty and slim,
So
with
it tends to help with it.
shadowed eyes that warned him to temper his smile. Of course, she might be useful if she was both greedy and honest, meaning that she would stay bought once he paid her. It was always good to find another set of hands to place a note, a tongue that would tell him what was heard, and say what he wanted, where he wanted. You have enough hands and ears, so stop thinking of a fine bosom and remember the look in her eye. Interesting thing was that she sounded as if she meant what she said, and one of the young fellows nodded agreement to her words.
Yes, Tom said. I wonder which High Lord had charge of the docks yesterday.
He nearly fumbled the balls in irritation.
Might get a little
Bringing it
somewhat
right out
dark
like that. He was too
like
tired.
that, just because
He should have been there hours ago.
light's going
The docks are the
there.
defender's responsibility, the oldest
Gotta
woman told
charge it up.
him. You'd not know that, of course. The High Lords would not concern themselves. Tom knew it very well.
Is that so? Well, I am not tired, of course.
He changed the balls from a simple circle to a double loop. It looked more difficult than it was, and the girl with the predatory look clapped her hands. Now that he was into it, he might as well go on. To this, though, he would call it a night. A night? The sun was rising already.
Still, it is a shame no one asked why those barges were at the docks, with their hatches down, hiding all those trollocs. Not that I'm saying anyone knew the trollocs were there.
Double loop wobbled, and he quickly went back to a circle. Like he was exhausted.
You'd think one of the High Lords would have asked, though.
2 young men frowned thoughtfully at one another, and Tom smiled to himself. Another seed planted, just that easily, and clumsily as well. Another rumor started, whatever they knew for a fact about who had charge of the docks. And rumors spread. A rumor like this would not stop short of the city. So it was another small wedge of suspicion driven between commoners and nobles. Who would the commoners turn to, except the man they knew the nobles hated? The man who had saved the stone from Shadow Spawn. Randolph Thor, the Lord Dragon. It was time to leave what he had sown. If the roots had taken hold here, nothing he said now could pull them loose, and he had scattered other seeds this night.
Nope.
But it would not do for anyone to discover he was the one doing the planting.
Huh?
It fought brave.
Might get a little
last night,
dark.
the High Lords did.
Why, I saw. He trailed off as the women leaped to their mopping, and the men grabbed at the chest and hurried away. I can find work for Gleeman, too, the Majira's voice said behind him. Idle hands are idle hands. He turned gracefully, considering his
Uh-huh.
and swept her a deep bow. The top of her head was below his shoulder, but she probably weighed half again what he did. She had a face like an anvil, not improved by the bandage around her temples, an extra chin and deep-set eyes like chips of black flint.
A good morning to you, gracious lady.
A small token of this fresh new day. He gestured with a flurry of hands and tucked a golden-yellow sunburst blossom, only a little bedraggled for its time up his sleeve, into the gray hair above her bandage. She snatched the flower right out again, of course, and eyed it suspiciously, but that was just as he wanted. He put 3 limping strides into a moment of hesitation, and when she shouted something after him, he neither listened nor slowed. Horrible woman, he thought. If we had turned her loose on the Trollocs, she'd have had them all sweeping and mopping. Yawned behind a hand, jaws creaking. He was too old for this. He was tired, and his knee was a knot of pain. Nights with no sleep, battles, flying. Too old. He should be living quietly on a farm somewhere, with chickens. Farms always had chickens. And sheep. They must not be difficult to look after. Shepherds seemed to loll about and play the pipes all the time. He would play the harp, of course, not pipes. Or his flute. Weather was not good for the harp. And there would be a town nearby, with an inn, where he could amaze the patrons in the common room. He flourished his cloak as he passed 2 servants. The only point in wearing it in this heat was to let people know he was a gleeman. They perked up at the sight of him, of course, hoping he might pause to entertain for a moment. Most gratifying. Yes, a farm had its virtues. A quiet place. No people to bother him. As long as there was a town close by. Pushing open the door to his room, he stopped in his tracks. Moraine straightened, as if she had a perfect right to be going through the papers scattered on his table, and calmly arranged her skirts as she sat on the stool. There was a beautiful woman, every grace a man could want, including laughing at his quips. Old fool. She's Aes Sedai, and you're too tired to think straight. Good morning to you, Moraine Sedai, he said, hanging his cloak on a peg. He avoided looking at his writing case, still sitting under the table where he had left it. No point in letting her know it was important. Probably no point in checking after she went, for that matter. She could have channeled the lock open and closed again. He would never be able to tell. Weary as he was, he could not even remember whether he had left anything incriminating in the case. Or anything else, for that matter. Everything he could see in the room was right where it belonged. He did not think he could have been foolish enough to leave anything out. Doors in the servants' quarters had no locks or latches.
I would offer you a refreshing drink, but I fear I have nothing but water.
I am not thirsty, she said in a pleasant, melodious voice. She leaned forward, and the room was small enough for her to place a hand on his right knee. A chill tingle rippled through him. I wish a good healer had been here when this happened. It is too late now, I regret.
A dozen healers would not have been enough, he told her. A half-man did it.
I know. What else does she know, he wondered. Turning to pull his lone chair out from behind the table, he bit back an oath. He felt as if he had had a good night's sleep, and the pain was gone from his knee. His limp remained, but the joint was more limber than it had been since he was injured. The woman didn't even ask if I wanted it. Burned me after. He refused to flex the leg. If she would not ask, he would not acknowledge her gift. An interesting day yesterday, she said.
I'd not
Earlier, the High Lord Carlion dead. His good friend Tadosian apparently mistook him for a boar, or perhaps a deer.
I haven't heard.
He kept his voice calm. Even if she had found the note, she could not have traced it to him. Carlion himself would have thought it by his own hand. He did not think she could have, but he reminded himself again that she was Aes Sedai. As if he needed any reminding, with that smooth, pretty face across from him, those serene, dark eyes watching him full of all his secrets.
The servants' quarters are full of gossip, but I seldom listen.
You know, she murmured mildly. Then you will not have heard that Tadosian fell ill not an hour after returning to the camp. Directly after he had a goblet of wine to wash away the dust of the hunt. He said he wept when he learned that she means to tend him herself and feed him with her own hands. No doubt, tears of joy at her love. I hear she has vowed not to leave his side until he can rise again, or until he dies. She knew. How, he could not say, but she knew. But why was she revealing it to him? Tragedy, he said, matching her bland tone. Rand will need all the loyal High Lords he can find, I suppose. Carlian and Tadosian were hardly loyal, even to each other, it seems. They led the faction that want to kill Rand, and tried to forget he ever lived. I pay little attention to such things. The works of the mighty are not for a simple being.
I had to slow it again,
Her
but
smile was
we'll
just
take a
a
little
short
breather
laughter,
from it
she
real
spoke
quick.
as if reading from a page. Homegirl Marilyn, called the Grey Fox once, my son knew him.
Some cranberry juice.
Court bard at the royal palace of Andor in Canaan. Morghez's lover for a time, after Tarangale died. Fortunate for Morghez, Tarangale's death. I do not suppose she ever learned he meant her to die, and himself to be Andor's first king. But we were speaking of Tom Merrin, a man who, it was said, could play the game of houses in his sleep. It is a shame that such a man calls himself Simple Gleeman. With such arrogance to keep the same name. A masked his shot with effort. How much did she know? Too much if she knew not another word. But she was not the only one with knowledge. Speaking of names, he said levelly, it is remarkable how much can be puzzled out from a name. Moraine Damodred, the Lady Moraine of House Damodred in Carrion. Tarangale's youngest half-sister, King Lemon's niece, and Aes Sedai, let us not forget. And Aes Sedai aiding the Dragon Reborn since before she could have known that he was more than just another poor fool in the channel. And Aes Sedai with connections high in the White Tower, I would say. Else she'd not risk what she has. Someone in the hall of the tower? More than one, I'd say. It would have to be. News of that would shake the world. But why should there be trouble? Perhaps it's best to leave an old Gleeman tucked away in his hole in the servants' quarters. Just an old Gleeman playing his harp and telling his tales. Tales that harm no one. He had managed to stagger her even a fraction, she did not show it. Speculation without facts is always dangerous, she said calmly. I do not use my house name by choice. House Damodred has a deservedly unpleasant reputation before Raymond cut down Avendor Aldera and lost the throne and his life for it. Since the Aiel War, it has grown worse, also deservedly. Nothing to shake the wall. What do you want of me? He demanded irritably. She did not as much as blink. Thane and Nynaeve take ship for Tanchico today. A dangerous city, Tanchico. Your knowledge and skills might keep them alive. So that was it. She wanted to separate him from Rand, leave the boy naked to her manipulations. As you say, Tanchico is dangerous now, but then it always was. I wish the young women well, yet I've no wish to stick my head into a viper's nest. I'm too old for that sort of thing. I've been thinking of taking up farming. A quiet life. Safe. Quiet life would kill you, I think. Sounding distinctly amused, she busied herself rearranging the folds of her skirt with small, slender hands. He had the impression she was hiding a smile. Tanchico will not, however. I guarantee that. And by the first oath, you know it for truth. Frowned at her despite his best efforts to keep his face straight. She had said it, and she could not lie. Yet how could she know? He was sure she could not foretell. He was certain he had heard her disavow the talent. But she had said it. Burn the woman. Or should I go to Tanchico? She could do without titles. To protect Elaine, Morghez's daughter? I've not seen Morghez in 15 years. Elaine was an infant when I left Camelot. hesitated, but when she spoke, her voice was unrelentingly firm. And your reason for leaving Andor? A nephew named Owen, I believe. One of those poor fools you spoke of who can channel. Red sisters were supposed to bring him to Tarvalon, as any such man is. But instead, they gentled him on the spot, and abandoned him to the mercies of his neighbors. Tom knocked his chair over standing up, then had to hold on to the table because his knees were shaking. Owen had not lived long after being gentled, driven from his home by supposed friends, who could not bear to let even a man who could no longer channel live among them. Nothing Tom did could stop Owen not wanting to live, or stop his young wife from following him to the grave inside the month. Why? Cleared his throat roughly, tried to make his voice less husky. Why are you telling me this? There was sympathy on Moraine's face, and could it be regret? Surely not. Not from an Aes Sedai. The sympathy had to be false as well. I would not have done, had you been willing to go simply to help Elaine and Nynaeve. I burn you. Why? If you go with Elaine and Nynaeve, I will tell you the names of those Red Sisters when I see you next, as well as the name of the one who gave them their orders. Who did not act on their own. And I will see you again. You will survive Tarvalon. He drew an uneven breath. What good will their names do me? He asked in a flat voice. Aes Sedai names, wrapped in all the power of the White Tower. A skilled and dangerous player of the House of Games might find a use for them, she replied quietly. Should not have done what they did. They should not have been excused for it. Will you leave me, please? I will teach you that not all Aes Sedai are like those Reds, Tom. You must learn that. Please. He stood leaning on the table until she was gone, unwilling to let her see him sink awkwardly to his knees, see the tears trickling down his weathered face. All right, Owen. He had buried it all as deeply as he could. I couldn't get there in time. I was too busy. Too busy with the bloody game of houses. He scrubbed at his face testily. Crane could play the game with the best, wrenching him around this way, tugging every string he had thought perfectly hidden. Owen, Elaine, Morghez's daughter. Only fondness remained for Morghez. Just a little more than that. But it was hard to walk away from a child you had bounced on your knee. That girl in Tanchico. That city would eat her alive even without a war. It must be a pit of rabid wolves now. And Moraine will give me the names. All he had to do was leave Rand in Aes Sedai hands, just as he had left Owen. She had him like a snake in a cleft stick, damned however he writhed. Burn the woman.
Putting the embroidery basket's handle over her arm, Min gathered her skirts with her other hand and strolled out of the dining hall after breakfast in a gliding pace, her back straight. She could have balanced a full goblet of wine on her head without spilling a drop. Partly that was because she could not take a proper stride in her dress, all pale blue silk, with a snug bodice and sleeves, and a full skirt that would drag its embroidered hem on the ground if she did not hold it up. It was also partly because she was sure she could feel Laris's eyes on her. A glance back proved her right. The mistress of the kitchens, a wine cask on legs, was beaming after her approvingly from the dining hall doorway. Who would have thought the woman had been a beauty in her youth, or would have a place in her heart for pretty, flirtatious girls? Lively, she called them. Who would have suspected she would decide to take Elmindrida under her stout wing? It was hardly a comfortable position. Laris kept a protective eye on Min, an eye that seemed to find her anywhere in the tower grounds. Min smiled back and patted her hair, now a round black cap of curls. Burn the woman. Doesn't she have something to cook, or some scullion to yell at? Laris waved to her, and she waved in return. She could not afford to offend someone who watched her so closely, not when she had no idea how many mistakes she might be making. Varus knew every trick of lively women, and expected to teach Min any she did not already know. One real mistake, Min reflected as she took a seat on a marble bench beneath a tall willow, had been the embroidery, not from Varus's point of view, but her own. Pulling her embroidery hoop from the basket, she ruefully examined yesterday's work, a number of lopsided yellow ox-eyes, and something she had meant to be a pale yellow rosebud, though no one would know unless she told them. With a sigh, she set to picking the stitches out. Liana was right, she supposed. A woman could sit for hours with an embroidery hoop, watching everyone and everything, and nobody thought it strange. It would have helped, though, if she had any skill at all. At least it was a perfect morning for being out of doors. A golden sun had just cleared the horizon in a sky where the few fluffy white clouds seemed arrayed to emphasize the perfection. A light breeze caught the scent of roses and ruffled tall calma bushes with their big red or white blossoms. Soon enough, the gravel-covered paths near the tree would be full of people on one errand or another, everyone from Aes Sedai to stablemen. A perfect morning, and a perfect place from which to watch unobserved. Perhaps today she would have a useful viewing. Elmingrida? Min jumped and stuck her pricked finger in her mouth. Twisting round on the bench, she prepared to assail Gawain for sneaking up on her, but the words froze in her throat. Galad was within. Taller than Gawain, with long legs, he moved with a dancer's grace and a lean, sinewy strength. His hands were long, too, elegant yet strong, and his face. He was, quite simply, the most beautiful man she had ever seen. "Stop sucking your finger," Gawain said with a grin. "We know you are a pretty little girl. You do not need to prove it to us." Blushing, she hastily pulled her hand down and barely restrained herself from a furious glare that would not have been at all in keeping with Elmingrida. He had needed no threats or commands from the Amelin to keep her secret, only her asking, but he did take any opportunity to tease that presented itself. "It is not right to mock, Gawain," Galad said. He did not mean to offend Mistress Elmingrida. "Your pardon, but can it be we have met before? When you frowned at Gawain so fiercely just then, I almost thought I knew you." Min dropped her eyes demurely. "Oh, I could never forget meeting you, my Lord Galad," she said in her best foolish girl voice. The simpering tone and anger at her own slip sent a tide of heat to her hairline, improving her disguise. She did not look anything like herself, and the dress and the hair were only a part of it. Liana had acquired creams and powders and an incredible assortment of mysterious scented things in the city, and drilled her until she could have used them in her sleep. She had cheekbones now, and more color in her lips than nature had put there, a dark cream lining her eyelids and a fine powder that emphasized her lashes made her eyes seem larger. Not at all like herself. Some of the novices had told her admiringly how beautiful she was, and even a few Aes Sedai had called her a very pretty child. She hated it. The dress was quite pretty, she admitted, but she hated the rest of it. Yet there was no point in donning a disguise if she did not keep it up. "I am sure you would remember," Gawain said dryly. "I did not mean to interrupt you at your embroidery. Swallows, are they? Yellow swallows?" He tossed the hoop back into the basket. "But I wanted to ask you to comment on this." He pushed a small leather-bound book, old and tattered, into her hands, and suddenly his voice was serious. "Tell my brother this is nonsense. Perhaps he will listen to you." She examined the book. "The Way of the Light," by Lothair Mantelan. Opening it, she read at random. "Therefore abjure all pleasure, for goodness is a pure abstract, a perfect crystalline ideal, which is obscured by base emotion. Pamper not the flesh. Flesh is weak, but spirit is strong. Flesh is useless where spirit is strong. Right thought is drowned in sensation, and right action hindered by passions. Take all joy from rightness, and rightness only. It seemed to be dry nonsense. And smiled at Gawain and even managed to titter. So many words. I fear I know little of books, my Lord Gawain. I always mean to read one. I do, she sighed. But there is so little time. Why, just fixing my hair properly takes hours. Do you think it is pretty? The outraged startlement on his face nearly made her laugh, but she changed it to a giggle. It was a pleasure to turn the tables on him for a change. She would have to see if she could do it more often. There were possibilities in this disguise she had not considered. This stay in the tower had turned out to be all boredom and irritation. She deserved some amusement. Lothair Montalar, Gawain said in a tight voice, founded the White Cloaks. The White Cloaks! He was a great man, Galad said firmly. A philosopher of noble ideals. If the children of the light have sometimes been excessive since his day, it does not change that. Oh my. White Cloaks, Min said breathlessly, and added a little shudder. They are such rough men, I hear. I cannot imagine a White Cloak dancing. Do you think there is any chance of a dance here? I said I do not seem to care for dancing either, and I do so love to dance. The frustration in Gawain's eyes was delightful. I do not think so, Galad said, taking the book from her. Aes Sedai are too busy with their own affairs. If I hear of a suitable dance in the city, I will escort you if you wish it. You need have no fear of being annoyed by those two laughs.
Give me 1 second,
He
everyone.
smiled at her, unconscious of what he was doing, and she suddenly found herself breathless in the truth. Men should not be allowed smiles like that.
No.
It actually took her a moment to remember what two louts he was talking about. The two men who had supposedly asked for Elminda's hand in marriage, nearly fighting each other because she could not make up her mind, pressing her to the point of seeking sanctuary in the tower because she could not stop encouraging them both. Just the entire excuse for her being there. It's this dress, she told herself. I could think straight if I had on my proper clothes. Notice the Amelin speaks to you every day, Gawain said suddenly. Has she mentioned our sister Elaine, or Egwene Alvir? Has she said anything of where they are? Min wished she could black his eye. He did not know why she was pretending to be someone else, of course, but he had agreed to help her be accepted as Elmintrida, and now he was linking her to women too many in the tower knew were friends of Min. Oh, the Amelin is such a wonderful woman, she said sweetly, baring her teeth in a smile. She always asks how I am passing the time, and compliments my grace. I suppose she hopes I'll make a decision soon between Darvan and Gomal, but I just cannot. She widened her eyes, hoping it made her look helpless and confused. They're both so sweet. Who did you say? Your sister, my Lord Gawain? The daughter heir herself? I do not think I've ever heard the Amelin seat mention her. What was the other name? She could hear Gawain grinding his teeth. We should not bother Mistress Elmintrida with that, Galad said. It is our problem, Gawain. It is up to us to find the lie and deal with it. She barely heard him, because suddenly she was staring at a big man with long dark hair curling around slumped shoulders, wandering aimlessly down one of the gravel paths through the trees, under the watchful eyes of an accepted. She had seen Lodane before, a sad-faced, once hardy man, always with an accepted for companion. The woman was meant to keep him from killing himself as much as to prevent his escape. Despite his size, he truly did not seem up to anything of the latter sort.
I know.
But she had never before seen a flaring halo around his head, radiant in gold and blue. It was only there for a moment, but that was enough. Gain had proclaimed himself the Dragon Reborn. had been captured and gentled. Whatever glory
This
he
little
might have had
Ozzy,
as a
y'all.
false dragon was far behind him now. All that
Oh, buddy.
remained for him was the despair of the gentle,
I
like a
know.
man who had been robbed of sight and hearing and taste, wanting to die, waiting for the death that inevitably came to such men in a few years. He glanced at her, perhaps not seeing her. His eyes looked hopelessly inward. So why had he worn a halo that shouted of glory and power to come? This was something she had to tell the Ammerland. Poor fellow, Gawain muttered. I cannot help pitying him. Might it would be a mercy to let him end it. Why do they make him keep on living? He deserves no pity, Galad pronounced. Have you forgotten what he was, what he did? How many thousands died before he was taken? How many towns were burned? Let him live on as a warning to others. Gawain nodded, but reluctantly. Yet men followed him. Some of those towns were burned after they declared for him. I have to go, Min said, getting to her feet, and Galad was instantly all solicitude. Forgive us, Mistress Elminster. We did not mean to frighten you. Loghain cannot harm you. I give you my assurance. Yes, he's made me feel faint. Do excuse me. I really must go. Gawain looked extremely skeptical, but he scooped up her basket before she could touch it. Let me see part of the way at least, he said, his voice oozing false concern. This basket must be too heavy for you, dizzy as you are. I'd not want you to swoon. Wanted to snatch the basket and hit him with it, but that was not how Elminrida would react. Oh, thank you, my Lord Gawain. You are so kind. So kind. No, no, my Lord Galad. Do not let me encumber both of you. Do sit down here and read your book. Do say you will. I just could not bear it otherwise. She even fluttered her eyelashes. Somehow she managed to ensconce Galad on the marble bench though with Gawain, her skirts were an irritant. She wanted to get on her knees and run, but Elminrida would never run, and never expose so much of her legs except when dancing. Loris had lectured her severely on that very point. One time running, she would nearly destroy the image of Elminrida. And Gawain, give me that basket, you muscle-brained cretin, she snarled as soon as they were out of Galad's sight, and pulled it away from him before he could comply. What do you mean by asking me about Elaine and Egwene in front of him? Elminrida never met them. Elminrida does not care about them. Elminrida does not want to be mentioned in the same sentence with them. Can't you understand that? No, he said. Not since you won't explain. But I am sorry. There was hardly enough repentance in his voice to suit her. It is just that I'm worried. Where are they? This news coming upriver about a false dragon and Tyr makes me no easier in my mind. They're out there somewhere, the light knows where, and I'm asking myself, what if they're in the middle of a bonfire Loghain made for What if he isn't a false dragon? She asked, cautiously. You mean because the stories in the streets say he's taken the stone of Tyr? Rumor has a way of magnifying events. I will believe that when I see it. And in any case, it will take more to convince me. Even the stone could fall. Right. I don't really believe Elaine and Egwene are in Tyr, but the not knowing eats at my belly like acid.
It's okay.
If she is hurt,
It's okay.
Min did not know which she he meant, and suspected he did not either. In spite of his teasing, her heart went out to him, but there was nothing she could do.
Okay, hold on, buddy.
Only do
Hold
as
on.
I say, and I know. Trust the
Say goodnight, everyone, to Ozzy.
Trust.
He's going
He
to bed.
exhaled a long breath. Do you know Galad has been drinking in the taverns with white cloaks? Anyone can cross the bridges if they come in peace, even children of the bloody light. Galad? She said incredulously. In taverns? Drinking? No more than a cup or two, I'm sure. He would not unbend more than that, not for their name day. Gawain frowned as if unsure whether that might be a criticism of Galad. The point
What do you
is that
say?
he's talking with white cloaks, and now this book. According to the inscription, Eamon Valda himself gave it to him. In the hope you will find the way. Valgratman, the man commanding the White Cloaks on the other side of the bridges, not knowing he's eating Galata, too, listening to White Cloaks. If anything happens to our sister, or to Egwene, he shook his head. Do you know where they are, Min? Would you tell me if you did? Why are
Go.
you hiding? Because I drove two men mad with my beauty and cannot make up my mind, she told him acidly.
1 second,
He
everyone.
gave a bitter half-laugh, then masked it with a grin. Well, that at least I can believe. He chuckled and stroked under her chin with a finger.
Oh.
Very pretty girl, Elminda. A pretty, clever little girl. She doubled a fist and tried to punch him in the eye, but he danced back, and she stumbled over her skirts and nearly fell. You bloody ox of a thimble-brained man, she growled. Such grace of movement, Elminda, he laughed. Such a dulcet voice, as a nightingale or a cooing dove of the evening. What man would not grow starry-eyed at the sight of Elminda? The mirth slid away, and he faced her soberly. If you learn anything, please tell me. Please, I will beg on my knees, Ned. I will tell you, she said, if I can. If it's safe for them. I hate this place. Why can't I just go back to Rand? Left Gawain there and entered the tower proper by herself, keeping an eye out for Aes Sedai or Accepted, who might question why she was above the ground floor and where she was going. The news of Loghain was too important to wait until the Amelin encountered her, seemingly by accident, sometime in the late afternoon as usual. At least, that was what she told herself. Impatience threatened to pop out through her skin. She only saw a few Aes Sedai, turning a corner ahead of her or entering a room in the distance, which was all to the good. No one simply dropped in on the Amelin seat. The handful of servants she passed, all bustling about their work, did not question her, of course, or even look at her twice, except to drop quick curtsies, almost without pausing. Pushing open the door to the Amelin's study, she had a simpering tale ready in case anyone was with Lyanna, but the antechamber was empty. She hurried to the inner door and put her head in. The Amelin and the keeper were seated on either side of Swan's table, which was littered with small strips of thin paper. Their heads swiveled toward her sharply, a stare like 4 nails. What are you doing here? The Amelin snapped. You are supposed to be a silly girl claiming sanctuary, not a friend of my childhood. There is to be no contact between us except the most casual, in passing. If necessary, I'll name Laris to watch over you like a nurse over a child. She would enjoy that, I think, but I doubt you would. Min shivered at the thought. Suddenly, Loghain did not seem so urgent. It was hardly likely he could achieve any glory in the next few days. He was not really why she had come, though, only an excuse, and she would not turn back now. Closing the door behind her, she stammered out what she had seen and what it meant. She still felt uncomfortable doing so in front of Lyanna. Swan shook her head wearily. Another thing to worry about. Starvation in Cairhien, a sister missing in Tarabon, frolic raids increasing in the borderlands again, this fool who calls himself the Prophet stirring up riots in Gildan. He's apparently preaching that the dragon has been reborn as a Shinar lord, she said incredulously. Even the small things are bad. The war in Arad Doman has stopped trade from Saldaea, and the pinch is making unrest in Maradon. Zenobia may even be forced off the throne by it. The only good news I have heard is that the Blight has retreated for some reason. 2 miles or more of green beyond the border stones, without a hint of corruption or pestilence, all the way from Saldaea to Shinar. The first time in memory it has done that. But I suppose good news has to be balanced by bad. When a boat has one leak, it is sure to have others. I only wish it was a balance. Lyanna had the watch on Loghain increased. I can't see what trouble he could cause now, but I do not want to find out. She turned those piercing blue eyes on Min. Why did you come flapping up here with this like a startled gull? Loghain could have waited. The man is hardly likely to find power and glory before sunset. Mere echo of her own thoughts made Min shift uncomfortably. I know, she said. Liana's eyebrows rose warningly, and she added a hasty, "Mother." The keeper nodded approvingly. "That does not tell me why, child," Swan said. Min steeled herself. "Mother, nothing I've viewed since the first day has been very important. I certainly have not seen anything that points to the Black Aja." It still gave her a chill. "I've told you everything I know about whatever disaster you Aes Sedai are going to face, and the rest of it is..." She had to stop and swallow with that penetrating gaze on her. "Mother, there is no reason I should not go. There's reason I should. Perhaps Rand could make real use of what I can do. If he has taken the stone, Mother, he may need me. At least I need him. Burn me for a fool." The keeper shuddered openly at the mention of Rand's name. Swan, on the other hand, snorted loudly. "Your viewings have been very useful. It's important to know about Logain. You found the groom who was stealing before suspicion could land on anyone else, and that fire-haired novice who was going to get herself with child." Shiriam cut that short. "The girl won't even think of men until she's finished her training, but we'd not have known until it was too late without you. No, you cannot go. Sooner or later your viewings will draw me a charge to the Black Aja, and until they do, they still more than pay their passage." Min sighed, and not only because the Amelin meant to hold on to her. The last time she had seen that red-headed novice, the girl had been sneaking off to a wooded part of the grounds with a muscular guard. They would be married, maybe before the end of the Min had known that as soon as they saw them together, though the tower never let a novice leave until the tower was ready, even one who could not go any further in her training. There was a farm in that pair's future, and a swarm of children, but it was pointless to tell the Amelin that. "Do you at least let Darwin and Galat know that Egwene and their sister are all right, Mother?" Asking irked her, and her tone of voice did too. A child denied a slice of cake, begging for a cookie instead. "At least tell them something besides that ridiculous tale about doing penance on a farm." "I have told you that is none of your concern. Do not make me tell you again." "They don't believe it any more than I do," Min got out, before the Amelin's dry smile quieted her. It was not an amused smile. "So you suggest I change where they are supposed to be? After letting everyone think them on a farm? You suppose that might raise a few eyebrows? Everyone but those boys accepts it, and you. Well, Kulin Gaiden will just have to work them that much harder. Sore muscles and enough sweat will take most men's minds off other troubles. Women's minds, too. You ask any more questions, and I'll see what a few days scrubbing pots will do for you. Better to lose your services for 2 or 3 days than have you poking your nose where it does not belong." "Don't even know if they are in trouble, do you? Or Moiraine?" It was not Moiraine she meant. "Girl," Liana said warningly, but Min was not to be stopped now. "Why haven't we heard? Rumors reached here 2 days ago. 2 days. Why doesn't one of those slips on your desk contain a message from her? Doesn't she have pigeons? I thought you Aes Sedai had people with messenger pigeons everywhere. If there isn't one in Tyr, there should be. A man on horseback could have reached Tar Valon before now. Why?" The flat crack of Swan's palm on the table cut her off. "You obey remarkably well," she said wryly. "Child, until we hear something to the contrary, assume the young man is well. Pray that he is." Liana shivered again. "There's a saying in the Mauler, child," the Amelin went on. "Do not trouble trouble till trouble troubles you. Mark it well, child." There was a timid knock at the door. Amelin and the keeper exchanged glances, then 2 sets of eyes shifted to Min. Her presence was a problem. There was certainly nowhere to hide. Even the balcony was clearly visible from the room in its entirety. "A reason for you to be here," Swan muttered. "That doesn't make you any more than the fool girl you're supposed to be." Liana stand ready at the door. She and the keeper were on their feet together, Swan coming around the table while Liana moved to the door. Take me on the seat, girl. Move your feet. Child, move your feet. Now look sulky. Not angry, sulky. Stick your lower lip out and stare at the floor. I may make you wear ribbons in your hair. Huge red bows. Liana. The Amerlin put her fists on her hips and raised her voice. And if you ever walk in on me unannounced again, child, I will. Liana pulled the door open to reveal a dark novice who flinched at Swan's continuing tirade, then dropped a deep curtsy. Messages for the Amerlin, Isabel, the girl squeaked. 2 pigeons arrived at the loft. She was one of those who had told Min she was beautiful, and she tried to stare past the keeper with wide eyes. It does not concern you, child, Liana said briskly, taking the tiny cylinders of bone out of the girl's hand. Back to the loft with you. Before the novice finished rising, Liana shut the door, then leaned against it with a sigh. I have jumped at every unexpected sign since you told me. Straightening, she came back to the table. 2 more messages, Mother. Shall I? Yes. Open them, the Amerlin said. No doubt more gays has decided to invade Kyrian after all. Or Trollocs have overrun the borderlands. It would be of a piece with everything else. Min kept her seat. Swan had sounded all too realistic with some of those threats. Diana examined the red wax seal on the end of one of the small cylinders, no larger than her own finger joint, then broke it open with a thumbnail when she was satisfied it had not been tampered with. The rolled paper inside she extracted with a slim ivory pick. Nearly as bad as Trollocs, Mother, she said almost as soon as she began reading. Mazrim Time has escaped. Light, Swan barked. How? This only says he was taken away by stealth in the night, Mother. 2 sisters are dead. The mighty limn their souls. But we've little time to mourn the dead while the likes of Time are alive and ungentled. Where, Liana? Denquir, Mother. A village east of the Black Hills on the Maragon Road above the headwaters of the Anteyo and the Luan. It had to be some of his followers. Fools. Why won't they know when they are beaten? Choose out a dozen reliable sisters, Liana. The Amerlin grimaced. Reliable, she muttered. If I knew who was more reliable than the Silver Pike, I'd not have the problems I do. Do the best you can, Liana. A dozen sisters. And 500 of the guards. No, a full 1,000. Mother, the keeper said worriedly, the White Cloaks would not try to cross the bridges if I left them unwatched entirely. They would be afraid of a trap. There is no telling what is going on up there, Liana. I want whoever I send to be ready for anything. And Liana, Mazrim Time is to be gentled as soon as he is taken again. Liana's eyes opened wide with shock. The law? I know the law as well as you, but I will not risk having him freed again ungentled. I'll not risk another Guer Amalasin, not on top of everything else. Yes, Mother, Liana said faintly. The Amerlin picked up the second bone cylinder and snapped it in 2 with a sharp crack to get the message out. Good news at last, she breathed, a smile blooming on her face. Good news. The sling has been used. The shepherd holds the sword. Rand? Min asked, and Swan nodded. Of course, girl. The stone has fallen. Rand al'Thor, the shepherd, has Kalendor. Now I can move. Liana, I want the hall of the tower convened this afternoon. No, this morning. I don't understand, Min said. You knew the rumors were about Rand. Why are you calling the hall now? What can you do that you could not before? Swan laughed like a girl. What I can do now is tell them right out that I have received word from an Aes Sedai that the stone of Tyr has fallen and a man has drawn Kalendor. Prophecy fulfilled. Enough of it for my purpose, at least. The dragon is reborn. They'll flinch, they'll argue, but none can oppose my pronouncement that the tower must guide this man. At last I can involve myself with him openly. Open for the most part. You're doing the right thing, Mother, Liana said abruptly. I know if he has Kalendor, he must be the dragon reborn. But he can channel, Mother. A man who can channel. I only saw him once, but even then there was something strange about him. Something more than being Ta'veren. Mother, Is he so very different from time when it comes down to it? The difference is that he is the dragon reborn, daughter, the Amelin said quietly. Time is a wolf, and maybe rabbit. Randall Thor is the wolfhound we will use to defeat the shadow. Keep his name to yourself, Leona. Best not to reveal too much too soon. As you say, Mother, the keeper said, but she still sounded uneasy. Off with you now. I want the hall assembled in an hour. Swan thoughtfully watched the taller woman go. There may be more resistance than I would wish, she said when the door clicked shut. Men looked at her sharply. You don't mean, oh, nothing serious, child. Not as long as they don't know how long I have been involved with the Althor boy. She looked at the slip of paper again, then dropped it onto the table. I could wish Moraine had told me more. Why didn't she say more? And why have we not heard from her before this? More questions with you. That one you must ask Moraine. She's always gone her own way. Ask Moraine, child. Zara Covenly worked the hoe in a desultory fashion, frowning at the tiny sprouts of threadleaf and hen's foot poking up in the rows of cabbages and beets. It was not that Mistress Elward was a harsh taskmistress. She was no more stern than Zara's mother, and certainly easier than Shiriam. But Zara had not gone to the White Tower to end up back on a farm hoeing vegetables with the sun barely up. Her white novice dresses were packed away. She wore brown wool her mother might have sewn, the skirt tied up to her knees to keep it out of the dirt. It was all so unfair. She'd not done anything. Feeling her bare toes in the turned soil, she glared at a stubborn hen's foot and channeled, meaning to burn it out of the ground. Sparks flashed around the leafy sprout, and it wilted. Hurriedly, she sliced the thing out of the dirt and her mind. If there was any fairness in the world, Lord Galad would come to the farm while out hunting. Leaning on the hoe, she lost herself in a daydream of healing Galad's injuries received in a fall from his horse. Not his fault, of course. He was a wonderful horseman, and him lifting her up in front of him on his saddle, declaring he would be her warder. She would be Green Arja, of course, and Zara Covenly. Zara jumped at the sharp voice, but it was not Mistress Elwood. She curtsied as best she could, with her skirts gathered up. The day's greeting, Aes Sedai. Have you come to take me back to the tower? The Aes Sedai moved closer, not caring that her skirts dragged through the dirt of the vegetable patch. Despite the summer warmth of the morning, she wore a cloak, the hood pulled up to shadow her face. Before you left the tower, you took a woman to the Amelin seat. A woman calling herself Elmindadah. Yes, I see, Zara said, a slight question in her voice. She did not like the way the Aes Sedai had said that, as if she had left the tower for good. Tell me everything that you heard or saw, girl, from the moment you took the woman in charge. Everything. But I heard nothing, Aes Sedai.
I'll
The
be right
keeper
back,
sent me
everyone.
away as soon as pain racked her, digging her toes into the dirt, arching her back. The spasm lasted only moments, but it seemed eternal. Struggling for breath, she realized her cheek was pressed to the ground, and her still trembling fingers dug into the soil. She did not remember falling. She could see Mistress Elward's laundry basket lying on its side near the stone farmhouse, damp linen spilled out in a heap. Dazed, she thought that was odd. Moira Elward would never leave her washing lying like that. Everything, girl, the Aes Sedai said coldly. She was standing over Zara now, making no move to help her. She had hurt her. It was not supposed to be that way. Every person this Elmindadah spoke to, every word she said, every nuance and expression. She spoke to Lord Gawain, Aes Sedai, Zara sobbed into the earth. That is all I know, Aes Sedai. All. She began to weep in earnest, sure that was not enough to satisfy this woman. She was right. She did not stop screaming for a long time, and when the Aes Sedai left, there was not a sound around the farmhouse except for the chickens, not even breathing.
Chapter 18. Into the ways. Buttoning up his coat, Perrin paused, looking at the axe still secured in the wall as he had left it since drawing it out of the door. He did not like the idea of carrying the weapon again, but he untied the belt from the peg and buckled it around his waist anyway. The hammer he tied to his already stuffed saddlebags. Draping saddlebags and blanket roll over his shoulder, he gathered a filled quiver and his unstrung longbow from the corner. Rising sun poured heat and light through the narrow windows. The rumpled bed was the only proof that anyone had stayed here. Already the room had lost the feel of him. It even seemed to smell empty, despite his own scent on the sheets. He never stayed anywhere long enough to make that feel cling past his readiness to leave. Never long enough to put down roots, make it any kind of home. Well, I'm going home now. Turning his back on the already unoccupied room, he went aft. Gaul rose easily from where he had been squatting against the wall beneath a tapestry of men on horseback hunting lions. He bore all of his weapons, with 2 leather water bottles, and a rolled blanket and a small cookpot was strapped beside the worked leather bow case on his back. He was alone. The others? Perrin asked, and Gaul shook his head. Long away from the threefold land. I warned you of that, Perrin. These lands of yours are too wet. The air is like breathing water. There are too many people too close together. They have seen more than they want of strange places. I understand, Perrin said. Though what he understood was that there would be no rescue after all. No company of Aiel to drive the White Cloaks out of the true rivers. He kept his disappointment inside. It was sharp after thinking he had escaped his fate. But he could not say he had not prepared himself for the alternative. No point in crying when the iron split. You just reforged it. You have any trouble doing what I asked? None. I told one tyrant to take each thing you want to the Dragonwall Gate stable, and to tell no one of it. They will have seen one another there, but they will think the things are for me. Then they will keep silent. The Dragonwall Gate. You would think the spine of the world was just over the horizon instead of 100 leagues or more off. Aiel hesitated. The girl and the Ogier make no secret of their preparations, Perrin. She's been trying to find the Gleeman, and telling everyone she means to travel a ways. Scratching his beard, Perrin breathed heavily, close to a growl. If she gives me away to Moraine, I vow she'll not sit down for a week. She is very handy with those knives, Gaul said in a neutral tone. Not handy enough. Not if she's given me away. I hesitated. No company of Aiel. The gallows is still waiting. Gaul, if anything happens to me, if I give you the word, take Aiel away. She might not want to go, but take her anyway. See her safely out of the 2 rivers. Will you promise me that? I will do what I can, Perrin. For the blood debt I owe you, I will. Gaul sounded doubtful, but Perrin did not think Aiel's knives would be enough to stop him. Took back passages as much as possible, and narrow stairs meant to carry servants unobtrusively. Perrin thought it too bad the tyrants had not given servants their own corridors as well. Still, they saw few people, even in the broad hallways with their gilded lampstands and ornate hangings, and no nobles at all. He commented on the absence, and Gaul said, Randolph Thor has called them to the heart of the stone. Perrin only grunted, but he hoped Moraine had been among those summoned. He wondered whether this was Rand's way of helping him escape her. Whatever the reason, he was glad enough to take advantage of it. They stepped out of the last cramped stairway onto the ground floor of the stone, where cavernous hallways as wide as roads led to all the outer gates. There were no wall hangings here. Black iron lamps in iron brackets high on the walls lit the windowless passages, and the floor was paved with broad, rough stones, able to stand long wear from horses' shod hooves. Perrin picked his pace up to a trot. The stables lay just inside ahead down the great tunnel, the wide Dragonwall Gate itself standing open beyond, and only a handful of defenders for guard. Moraine could not intercept them now, not without the Dark One's own luck. The stable's open doorway was an arch 15 paces across. Baron took one step inside and stopped. The air was heavy with the smell of straw and hay, underlaid with grain and oats, leather, and horse manure. Stalls filled with fine Tyrant horses, prized everywhere, lined the walls, with mooring rows across the wide floor. Dozens of grooms were at work, currying and combing, mucking out, mending. Without pausing, one or another sometimes glanced at where Fail and Loyal stood, booted and ready for travel. And beside them, Bane and Chiad, accoutered like Gaul with weapons and blankets, water bottles and cooking pot. Are they why you only said you would try? Baron asked quietly. Gaul shrugged. I will do what I can, but they will take her side. Chiad is Goshen. Her clan makes a difference. Her clan and mine have blood feud, Baron. I am no spirit. Perhaps the water oath will hold. I will not dance spirit with her. But he shook his head. Strange people. What were water oaths? What he said, though, why are they with her? Bane says they wish to see more of your land, but I think it is the argument between you and Fail which fascinates them. They like her. When they heard of this journey, they decided to go with her instead of you. Well, as long as they keep her out of trouble. He was surprised when Gaul threw back his head and laughed. It made him scratch his beard worriedly. Loyal came toward them, long eyebrows sagging anxiously. His coat pockets bulged, as was usual when he was traveling, mainly with the angular shapes of books. At least his limp seemed better.
Fail is becoming impatient, Baron. I think she might insist on leaving any minute. Please hurry. You could not even find the way. Not that you should try, certainly. You humans make me leap about so I can hardly find my own head. Please hurry.
I will not leave him, Fail called. Not even if he is yet too stubborn and foolish to ask a simple favor. Should that be the case, he may still follow me like a lost puppy. I promise to scratch his ears and take care of him. The old woman doubled over laughing. Gaul leaped straight up suddenly, kicking higher, 2 paces or more above the floor, while twirling one of his spears. We will follow like stalking wolves, he shouted, like hunting wolves. Ended easily, lightly. Loyal stared at him in amazement. Bane, on the other hand, lazily combed her short, fiery hair with her fingers. I have a fine wolf skin with my bedding in the hold, she told Chiad in a bored voice. Wolves are so easily taken. A growl rose in Perrin's throat, pulling both women's eyes to him. Moment, Bane looked on the point of saying something more, but she frowned at his yellow stare and held her peace. Not afraid, but suddenly wary. This puppy is not well housebroken yet, Fail confided to him. Perrin refused to look at her. Instead, he went to the stall that held his dun stallion, as tall as any of the Tyrant animals, but heavier in shoulder and haunch. Waving away a groom, he bridled Stepper and let him out himself. The grooms had walked the horse, of course, but he had been confined enough to frisk in the quick steps that made Perrin give him his name. Perrin soothed him with the sure confidence of a man who had shoed many horses. It was no trouble at all putting his high-cantled saddle on, lashing his saddlebags and blanket roll behind. All watched with no expression. He would not ride a horse unless he had to, and then not a step farther than absolutely necessary. None of the Aiel would. Perrin did not understand why. Pride, perhaps, in their ability to run for long distances. The Aiel made it seem more than that, but he suspected none of them could have explained. The pack horse had to be ready too, of course, but that was quickly done, since everything Gaul had ordered was waiting in a neat pile. Food and water skins, oats and grain for the horses. None of that would be available in the ways. A few other things, like hobbles, some horse medicines just in case, spare tinderbox and such. Most of the space in the wicker hampers went for leather bottles like those the Aiel used for water, only larger and filled with lamp oil. Once the lanterns on long poles were strapped atop the rest, it was done. Thrusting his unstrung bow under the saddle girth, he swung up into Stepper's saddle with the pack animal's lead in hand. But then had to wait, seething. Loyal was already mounted on a huge, hairy, fetlocked horse, taller than any other in the stable by hands, yet reduced nearly to pony size by the Ogier's long legs hanging down. There had been a time when the Ogier was almost as unwilling a rider as the Aiel, but he was at home on a horse now. It was Aiel who took her time, examining her mount almost as if she had never seen the glossy black mare before, though Perrin knew she had put the horse through her paces before buying, soon after they came to the stone. The horse, Swallow by name, was a fine animal of tyrant breeding, with slender ankles and an arched neck, a prancer with a look of speed and endurance both, though shod too lightly for Perrin's taste. Those shoes would not last. It was all another effort to put him in his place, whatever she thought that was. Aiel finally mounted, in her narrow divided skirts, she reined closer to Perrin. She rode well, woman and horse moving as one. "Why can you not ask, Perrin?" she said softly. "You tried to keep me away from where I belong, so now you have to ask. Can such a simple thing be so difficult?" Stone rang like a monstrous bell, the stable floor leaping, the ceiling quivering on the point of coming down. Stepper leaped too, screaming, head flailing. It was all Perrin could do to keep his seat. Grooms scrambled off the floor where they had fallen, and ran desperately to quiet horses rearing, shrieking, attempting to climb out of their stalls. Loyal clung to the neck of his huge mount, but Aiel sat Swallow surely as the mare danced and squealed wildly. Ran. Perrin knew it was him. The pull of Taviran dragged at him, two whirlpools in a stream drawing one another. Coughing in the falling dust, he shook his head as hard as he could, straining not to dismount and run back up into the stone. "We ride," he shouted, while tremors still shook the fortress. "We ride now, Loyal. Now!" Aiel seemed to see no more point to delay. She heeled her mare out of the stable beside Loyal's taller horse. Their two pack animals pulled along, all galloping before they reached the Dragon Wall gate. The defenders took one look and scattered, some still on hands and knees. It was their duty to keep people out of the stone, and they had no orders to keep these in. Not that they would necessarily have been able to think straight enough to do so, even if they had had orders. Not with the tremors just subsiding, and the stone still groaning above them. Perrin was right behind with his own pack horse, wishing the Ogier's animal could run faster, wishing he could leave Loyal's lumbering mount behind and outrun the suction trying to draw him back. That pull of Taviran to Taviran. Galloped together through the streets of Tyr, toward the rising sun, barely slowing to avoid carts and carriages. Men in tight coats and women with layered aprons, still shaken by the upheaval, stared at them dazed, sometimes barely leaping out of the way. At the walls of the inner city, paving stones gave way to dirt. Shoes and coats to bare feet and bare chests above baggy breeches held up by broad sashes. The folk here dodged no less assiduously, though, and Perrin would not let Stepper slow until they had galloped past the city's outer wall, past the simple stone houses and shops that clustered outside the city proper, into a countryside of scattered farms and thickets, and beyond the pool of Taviran. Only then, breathing almost as hard as his mothered horse, he reined Stepper to a walk. Loyal's ears were stiff with shock. Aiel licked her lips and stared from the Ogier to Perrin, white-faced. "What happened? Was that him?" "Don't know," Perrin lied. "I have to go, Rand. You know that. You looked me in the face when I told you and said I had to do what I thought I must." "Bane and Chian," Aiel said. "It will take them an hour to catch up now. I wish they would ride. I offered to buy them horses and they looked offended." "Well, we need to walk the horses anyway after that, to let them cool down." Perrin held back from telling her she did not know as much of the Aiel as she thought she did. He could see the city walls behind them and the stone rearing above like a mountain. He could even make out the sinuous shape on the banner waving over the fortress, and the displaced birds swirling about. Neither of the others could have. It was no difficulty at all to see three people running toward them in long ground-eating strides. their flowing ease belying the pace. He did not think he could have run that fast, not for long, but the Aiel had to have maintained their speed from the stone to be this close behind. Not have to wait that long, he said. Aiel frowned back toward the city. Is that the... Are you certain? Abruptly, the frown shifted to him for a moment, daring him to answer. Asking him had been too much like admitting he was part of her party, of course. He is very boastful of his eyesight, she told Loyal, but his memory is not very good. At times, I think he would forget to light a candle at night if I did not remind him. I expect he's seen some poor family running from what they think is an earthquake, don't you? Loyal shifted uncomfortably in his saddle, sighing heavily, and muttered something about humans that Perrin doubted was complimentary. Fail did not notice, of course. Not too many minutes later, Fail stared at Perrin as the three Aiel drew close enough for her to make out. But she said nothing. In this mood, she was not about to admit he had been right about anything. Not if he said the sky was blue. The Aiel were not even breathing hard when they slowed to a halt beside the horses. It is too bad it was not a longer run. Bane shared a smile with Jihad and gave Gaul a sly look. Else we could have run this stone dog into the ground, Jihad said, as if finishing the other woman's sentence. That is why stone dogs take their vows not to retreat. Stone bones and stone heads make them too heavy to run. Paul took no offense, though stone bones and stone heads make them too heavy to run. Paul took no offense. Perrin noticed he stood where he could keep an eye on Jian. Know why maidens are so often used as scouts, Perrin? Because they can run so far. And that comes from being afraid some man might want to marry them. A maiden will run 100 miles to avoid that. Very wise of them, Fail said. She asked the Aiel, and looked surprised when they denied it. She turned to Loyal anyway. Are you ready to go on? Good. Find me this waygate, Loyal. We have stayed here too long. If you let a stray puppy stay close to you, he begins to think you will take care of it. And that will never do.
Fail,
Loyal protested.
are you not carrying this too far?
I will carry it as far as I must, Loyal. The waygate?
Just sagging, Loyal puffed out a heavy breath and turned his horse eastward again. Perrin let him and Fail get a dozen paces ahead before he and Gaul followed. He must play by her rules, but he would play them at least as well as she. Farms, cramped little places with rough stone houses Perrin would not have used to shelter animals, grew more scattered the farther east they rode, and the thickets smaller, until there were neither farms nor thickets, only a rolling, hilly grassland. Grass as far as the eye could see, unbroken except for patches of brush here and there on a hill. Horses dotted the green slopes too, in clumps of a dozen or herds of 100. The famed Tyrant stock. Large or small, each gathering of horses was under the eyes of a shoeless boy or two, mounted bareback. The boys carried long-handled whips that they used to keep the horses together or turn them, tracking the whips expertly to turn a stray without ever coming close to the animal's hide. They kept their charges clear of the strangers, moving them back if necessary, but they watched the passage of this odd company, 2 humans and an ogier mounted, plus 3 of the fierce Aiel that story said had taken the stone, with the bold curiosity of the young. It was all a pleasing sight to Perrin. Part of the reason he was to lead on had been the horses. Not that there were so many as this in Emmons Field, nor so fine. Not so loyal. The ogier began muttering to himself, louder the farther they rode across the grassy hills, until at last he burst out in a deep-bass rumble.
Gone. Oh, gone. And for what? Once this was an ogier field. We did no great work. Not to compare with Catherine, or the city you call Caven. But enough that a grove was planted, land and place. The great trees towering 100 spans into the sky, all tended devotedly to remind my people of the steading they had left to build things for men. Men think it is the stonework we prize, but that is a trifling thing, learned during the long exile after the breaking. It is the trees we love. Men thought Winethra my people's greatest triumph. We were to be the grove there, like this. And it will not be.
There the hills, there safe for grass and horses, his ears drawn back tightly. He smelled of fury. Spoke, most stories called Ogier, almost as specific as the traveling people. But some, a few, named them implacable enemies. Aaron had only seen Loyal angry once before. Perhaps he had been angry last night defending those children. Looking at Loyal's face, an old saying came back to him. Anger the Ogier and pull the mountains down on your head. Everyone took its meaning as to try to do something that was impossible. Aaron thought maybe the meaning had changed with the years. Maybe in the beginning it had been, anger the Ogier, and you pull the mountains down on your head. Difficult to do, but deadly if accomplished. He did not think he would ever want Loyal, gentle, bumbling Loyal, with his broad nose always in a book, to become angry with him. It was Loyal who took the lead once they reached the site of the vanished Ogier Grove, bending their path a little southward. There were no landmarks, but he was sure of his direction, surer with every pace of the horses. Ogier could feel the waygate, sense it somehow, find it as certainly as a bee could find the hive. When Loyal finally dismounted, the grass was little more than knee-high on him. There was only a thick clump of brush to be seen, taller than most, leafy shrubs as tall as the Ogier. He ripped it all away, almost regretfully, stacking it to one side.
Perhaps the boys with the horses can use it for firewood when it dries.
And there was the waygate. Peering against the side of the hill, it appeared more a length of gray wall than a gate. The wall was a palace at that, carved in leaves and finely done, but they seemed to have as the bushes had been. 3,000 years at least it had stood there, but not a trace of weathering marred its surface. Those leaves could have rippled with the next breeze. For a moment they all stared at it silently, until Loyal took a deep breath and put his hand on the one leaf that was different from any other on the waygate. The trefoil leaf of Avendesora, the fabled tree of life. Until the moment his huge hand touched it, it seemed as much a part of the carving as all the rest. But it came away easily. Aiel gasped loudly, and even the Aiel murmured. The air was full of the smell of unease. There was no saying who it came from. All of them, perhaps. The stone leaves did seem to stir from an unfelt breeze now. They took a tinge of green. Slowly a split appeared in the middle, and the halves of the waygate opened, revealing not the hill behind, but a dull shimmering that faintly reflected their images.
Once, it is said, Loyal murmured, the waygates shone like mirrors, and those who walked the ways walked through the sun and the sky. Gone now, like this grove.
Hastily pulling one of the filled pole lanterns from his pack horse, Aaron got it alight. It is too hot out here, he said. A little shade would be good. He booted Stepper toward the waygate. He thought he heard Aiel gasp again. The dun stallion walked, approaching his own dim reflection, but Aaron heeled him onward. Slowly, he remembered. It should be done slowly. The horse's nose touched its image hesitantly, then merged in as though walking into a mirror. Aaron moved closer to himself, touched. Icy cold slid along his skin, enveloping him hair by hair. Time stretched out. The cold vanished like a pricked bubble, and he was in the midst of endless blackness, the light of his pole lantern a crushed pool around him. Stepper and the pack horse whickered nervously. Gaul stepped through calmly and began preparing another lantern. Behind him was what seemed like a sheet of smoked glass. The others were visible out there, Loyal getting back on his horse, Fail gathering her reins, all of them creeping, barely moving. Time was different inside the ways. Fail is upset with you, Gaul said.
This is awful.
When Random House Audio presents Confessions of a Cartel Hitman, Families in the United States and Mexico. We got him. In Corona, an accomplished hitman for the extremely violent Tijuana cartel, also known as the Arellano Felix Organization, signed a plea agreement created by the said once he had his lantern alight. It did not have much illumination. The darkness drank in light, swallowed it. Seems to think you have broken some sort of agreement. Bain and Chiab, do not let them get you alone. They mean to teach you a lesson, for Fail's sake. And you will not sit on that animal so easily if they manage what they plan. I agree to nothing, Gaul. I do what she's forced me to do through trickery. We will have to follow this guy soon enough. I need to take the lead for as long as I can. He pointed to a thick white line under broken and heavily pitted. It led off ahead, vanishing in the blackness only a few feet away. That leads to the first guide post. We will need to wait there for Loyal to read it and decide which bridge to take. But Fail can follow us that far. Bridge, Gaul murmured thoughtfully. I know that word. There is water in here? No, it isn't exactly that kind of bridge. They look the same, sort of, but maybe Loyal can explain it. The Aielman scratched his head. You know what you are doing, Perrin? No, Guard admitted. But there's no reason for Fail to know that. Gaul laughed. It's fun to be so young, is it not, Perrin? Frowning, uncertain whether the man was laughing at him, Perrin heeled Stepper on, drawing the pack horse behind. The lantern light would not be visible at all in here, 20 or 30 paces from its edge. He wanted to be completely out of sight. Better think he could go on without her. If she worried for a few minutes, until she found him at the guidepost, it was the least she deserved.
Chapter 19. The Wave Dancer. The golden sun barely over the horizon, the shiny black lacquered carriage rocked to a halt at the foot of the wharf behind a team of four matched grays, and the lanky dark-haired driver in his black and gold striped coat leaped down to open the door. No sigil adorned the door panel, of course. Tyrone nobles gave aid to Aes Sedai only under duress, no matter how effusive the smiles, and none wanted their names or houses linked to the tower. Elaine got down gratefully without waiting for Nynaeve, straightening her blue linen summer traveling cloak. The streets of the Mala were rutted by carts and wagons, and the carriage's leather springs had not been very good. A breeze slanting across the Aranon actually seemed cool after the heat of the stone. She had intended to show no effects of the rough ride, but once upright she could not help knuckling the small of her back. At least last night's rain had still the dust down, she thought. She suspected that they had been given a carriage without curtains on purpose. North and south of her, more docks like wide stone fingers stretched into the river. The air smelled of tar and rope, fish and spices and olive oil, of nameless things rotting in the stagnant water between the piers, and peculiar long yellow-green fruits in huge bunches heaped in front of the stone warehouse behind her. Despite the early hour, men wearing leather vests on shirtless shoulders scurried about, toting large bundles on bent backs, or pushing handcarts piled with barrels or crates. None spared her more than a passing sullen glance, dark eyes falling quickly, forelock touched grudgingly. Most did not raise their heads at all. She was sad to see it. These Tyrone nobles had handled their people badly. Mishandled them was more like it. In Andor she could have expected cheerful smiles and a respectful word of greeting, freely given by straight-backed men who knew their worth as well as hers. It was almost enough to make her regret leaving. She'd been raised to lead and one day govern a proud people, and she felt the urge to teach these folk dignity. But that was Rand's job, not hers. And if he doesn't do it properly, I will give him a piece of my mind. A bigger piece. At least he had begun by following her advice, and she had to admit he knew how to treat his people. It would be interesting to see what he had done by the time she returned, if there's a point to coming back. A dozen ships were clearly visible from where she stood, and more beyond, but one, moored across the end of the dock she faced, sharp bow upriver, filled her eyes. The Seafolk breaker was easily 100 paces long, half again as large as the next vessel in sight, with 3 great towering masts amidships, and one shorter on the raised deck at the stern. She had been on ships before, but never one so big, and never on one going to sea. Just the name of the ship's owners spoke of distant lands and strange ports. The Athan-Mier, the Seafolk. Stories meant to be exotic always contained the Seafolk, unless they were about the Aiel. Nynaeve climbed out of the carriage behind her, tying a green traveling cloak at her neck, and grumbling to herself and to the driver. Tumbled about like a hen in a windstorm. Thumped like a dusty rug. How did you manage to find every last rut and hole between here and the stone, Goodman? That took true skill. A pity none of it goes into handling horses. He tried to hand her down, his narrow face sullen, but she refused his aid. Sighing, Elaine doubled the number of silver pennies she was taking from her purse. Thank you for bringing us safely and swiftly. She smiled as she pressed the coins into his hand. We told you to go fast, and you did as we asked. The streets are not your fault, and you did an excellent job under poor conditions. Without looking at the coins, the fellow gave her a deep bow, a grateful look, and a murmured, "Thank you, my lady," as much for the words as the money, she was sure. She had found that a kind word and a little praise were usually received as well as silver was, if not better, though the silver itself was seldom unappreciated, to be sure. "The lights send you a safe journey, my lady," he added. The merest flicker of his eyes toward Nynaeve said that wish was for Elaine alone. Nynaeve had to learn how to make allowances and give consideration. Truly she did. When the driver had handed their bundles and belongings out of the carriage, turned his team, and started away, Nynaeve said grudgingly, "I shouldn't have snapped at the man, I suppose. A bird could not make an easy way over those streets. Not in a carriage, at any rate. But after bouncing about all the way here, I feel as if I'd been on horseback a week." "It isn't his fault you have a sore back," Elaine said, with a smile to take away any sting as she took up her things. Nynaeve barked a wry laugh. "I said that, didn't I? You will not expect me to go running after him to apologize, I hope. That handful of silver you gave him should soothe any wounds short of mortal. You really must learn to be more careful with money, Elaine. We do not have the realm of Andor's resources for our own use. A family could live comfortably for a month on what you hand out to everyone who does the work they've been paid to do for you." Elaine gave her a quietly indignant look. Nynaeve always seemed to think they should live worse than servants, unless there was reason not to, instead of the other way around, as made sense. But the older woman did not appear to notice the expression that always put royal guardsmen on their toes. Instead, Nynaeve hoisted her bundles and sturdy cloth bags and turned down the dock. "At least this ship will be a smoother ride than that. I do hope smooth. Shall we go aboard?" As they picked their way down the pier between working men and stacked barrels and carts full of goods, Elaine said, "Nynaeve, the Seafolk can be touchy until they know you, or so I was told. Do you think you might try to be a little... well, what?" "Tactful, Nynaeve." Elaine skipped a step as someone spat on the dock in front of her. There was no telling which fellow had done it. When she looked around, they all had their heads down and were hard at work. Mishandling by the High Lords or no, she would have said a few quietly sharp words that the culprit would not have soon forgotten if she could have found him. You might try to be a little tactful for once. Of course, Nynaeve started up the raker's rope-railed gangway. As long as they do not bounce me about. Elaine's first thought on reaching the deck was that the Raker appeared very narrow for its length. She did not know a great deal about ships in truth, but to her it seemed a huge splinter. Oh, light. This thing will toss worse than the carriage, however big it is. Her second was for the crew. She had heard stories about the Afa'an-Nier, but had never seen one before. Even the stories told little, really. A secretive people who kept to themselves, almost as mysterious as the Aiel. Only the lands beyond the waste could possibly be more strange, and all anyone knew of them was that the sea folk brought ivory and silk from there. These Afa'an-Nier were dark, barefoot, and bare-chested men, all cleanly shaven, with straight black hair and tattooed hands, moving with the sureness of those who knew their tasks well enough to do them with half a mind, but were putting their whole minds to it. There was a rolling grace to their movements, as though, with the ship still, they yet felt the motions of the sea. Most wore gold or silver chains about their necks, and rings in their ears, sometimes 2 or 3 in each, and some with polished stones. There were women among the crew, too, as many as the men, hauling ropes and coiling lines right with the men, with the same tattooed hands, in the same baggy breeches of some dark oiled cloth, held by colorful narrow sashes and hanging open at the ankle. But the women wore loose, colorful blouses, too, all brilliant reds and blues and greens, and they had at least as many chains and earrings as the men, including, Elaine noticed with a small shock, 2 or 3 women with rings in one side of their noses. The grace of the women outshone even that of the men, and put Elaine in mind of some stories she had heard as a child, by listening where she was not supposed to. Women of the Afa'an-Nier were, in those tales, the epitome of alluring beauty and temptation, pursued by all men. The women on this ship were no more beautiful than any others, really, but watching them move, she could believe those tales. 2 of the women on the raised deck at the stern were obviously not ordinary crew. They were barefoot, too, and their garb was of the same cut, but one was clothed entirely in brocaded blue silks, the other in green. The older of the pair, the one in green, wore 4 small gold rings in each ear and one in the left side of her nose, all worked so they sparkled in the morning sunlight. A fine chain ran from her tiny nose ring to one earring, supporting a row of tiny dangling gold medallions, and one of the chains around her neck held a pierced golden box, like ornate gold lace, that she lifted to sniff from time to time. The other woman, the taller, had only 6 earrings in total, and fewer medallions. The pierced box she sniffed at was just as finely wrought gold, though. Exotic indeed. Elaine winced just thinking about the nose rings, and that chain. Something odd about the stern deck itself caught her eye, but at first she could not tell what. Then she saw. There was no tiller for the rudder. Some sort of spoked wheel stood behind the women, lashed down so it could not turn, but no tiller. How did they steer? The smallest riverboat she had seen had had a tiller. There had been tillers on all the other ships lining the nearby docks. More and more mysterious, these sea folk. Remember what Moraine told you, she cautioned as they approached the stern deck. That had not been much. Even Aes Sedai knew little about the Afa'an-Nier. Moraine had imparted the proper phrasings, though, the things that had to be said for good manners. And remember tact, she added in a firm whisper. I will remember, Nynaeve replied sharply. I can be tactful. Elaine truly hoped she would. The 2 sea folk women waited for them at the top of the stairs. Ladder, Elaine remembered, even when they were stairs. She did not understand why ships had to have different names for common things. A floor was a floor in a barn or an inn or a palace. Why not on a ship? A cloud of perfume surrounded the 2, a slightly musky scent, wafting from the lacy gold boxes. The tattoos on their hands were stars and seabirds surrounded by the curls and whirls of stylized waves. Nynaeve inclined her head.
Alright, everyone. I'm going to call into this live for tonight. I want to thank everyone for stopping by, and everyone keeps stopping by. I appreciate all your support. Until next time, everyone, y'all stay safe.